Hi, in this tutorial I will give an overview of Django and how you can use Django in combination with the PostgreSQL database. So here is a short contents of this tutorial. First, a short introduction, an overview of Django, an overview of PostgreSQL database. Then we will create a Django project and a Django app. Then we will use Django in combination with PostgreSQL. We will create a basic Django app. And we will also use this Django Admin, which is part of the Django software. First, a short introduction. So, Django has support for databases like SQLite, MySQL, MariaDB, Postgre. Part of Django, Django includes an SQLite database, but typically this SQLite database is for internal use, for testing, etc., and for small projects. For larger projects, you should use a proper database system like MySQL, MariaDB, or PostgreSQL. In this tutorial, we will see how we can use Django in combination with PostgreSQL. So we will create a simple Django application, just call it customer app, that retrieves a list of customers that are stored in this PostgreSQL database. Finally, we will also use this built-in functionality, which is part of Django, called Django Admin. This is a module to create so-called CRUD functionality. We can use it to create, read, update, and delete, in our case, customers that are stored in the Postgre database. So here you see the Django application that we are going to create as part of this tutorial. It's a basic customer application that just shows a list of customers, and these customers are stored in the PostgreSQL database. So in this tutorial we need the following software and tools. We need Python because we need to have Python installed in order to use and install Django, because Django is a web development framework that is based on Python. And then of course we need Django. Django is basically a Python package installed using this pip command, which is part of Python. And then we need this PostgreSQL database system. And finally we need a proper code editor like Visual Studio Code or another code editor if you prefer that. So let's start with a short introduction to Django before we dig into details about installing Django, creating a Django project and a Django app, etc. So basically, Django is a Python web development framework. Django is a so-called backend or server-side web framework. And Django is very powerful in combination with a database system. And Django has built-in support for different databases like SQLite, MySQL, MariaDB, or PostgreSQL. In this tutorial, we will use this PostgreSQL. Django includes also this SQLite database as part of the Django installation, but typically for real use, and if you want to create a professional Django application, typically you need to use a more proper database system like these other alternatives here. Django is free and it's open source, and it's also written in Python, and also you use Python in order to create these web applications. To get more information about Django, you should visit the homepage and read the information on that homepage. So Django follows the so-called MVT design pattern. It's short for Model View Template. So in order to create applications in Django, we need to have focus on these three different parts, namely the model, the view, and the template. And the model is basically the data you want to present, usually data from a database. In our case, we will use PostgreSQL database as our database. And these models, because you can have, of course, many models in your application, is usually located in a file called models.py. So when you create a Django project and a Django app, this models.py will be part of the file and part of the file structure which is created when you create this Django project and the Django app. Then next, the view. View is basically a request handler that returns the relevant template, which is part of this model view template pattern. So this request is based on a request from the user when the user requests a specific web page. And all these views that you need to create as part of your application is typically located in a file called views.py, which is also part of the Django file structure when you create this Django project and the Django app. Finally, your application will consist of multiple templates. On the template, it's basically an HTML file containing the layout of the web page. And all your templates are typically stored in a subfolder called templates. This template is not created by Django when you create the Django project and the Django app, so you just need to create it manually. So here you see some important folders and files, which is part of a Django project and a Django application. I mentioned this views.py, where all the views are created and stored, and same for the models.py, where all the models are created. And then you have these so-called template files, which is basically just HTML files. And these template files or HTML files are typically stored in a separate subfolder called templates. So here you see a short overview of the workflow in a Django application. You have the web browser where you as a user sit and enter an URL like this. So you have an IP address or a domain name, and then a /customers or something in this case. So basically it's a HTTP request that is sent to the Django server, and then the view will be responsible to handle the request from the user, and then it will communicate with the model, which is basically just Python functions that are stored in this model.py file. And these models are then communicating with your database. And here you can select between different database systems, but in this tutorial we use this PostgreSQL database. And then data from the model is sent to the template, which is basically an HTML web page, and then this web page is sent back to the web browser and the user as an HTTP response. And then the user can sit here in the web browser and see the contents of the template or the contents of the HTML page that he has requested as part of the Django workflow. So basically that's a short overview of Django and the different parts that Django consists of, like this view, model, and the template. So before we start creating the Django project and the Django app, we need a short overview of the PostgreSQL database system that we are going to use. So basically PostgreSQL is an open source database system. PostgreSQL exists for Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. And you find more information and resources at their homepage here, including how to download the software. And also you have this company called EnterpriseDB. It's a company that is one of the largest contributor to the PostgreSQL community, and it's also responsible for the installer. And also this company EDB offer paid services for enterprises, but you can also use Postgre for free. And you can basically either go to the homepage of Postgre here to find the installation, or go directly to this link in order to download this PostgreSQL database system. So basically go to the homepage of the Postgre database, or go directly to this link in order to download and install the PostgreSQL database system. So here, after you have downloaded the setup, this will pops up. So basically just go through the wizard step by step, and also make sure that you have this PostgreSQL server, which is the database system itself, and also this PG Admin, which is the administration tool that you can use in order to configure and set up the PostgreSQL database system. Here you can create new databases, you can create tables, you can run SQL commands, etc. And also, as part of the setup, you need to enter a password for the Postgres super user. So make sure that you select a proper password and remember it for later. An important part of the Postgre installation is this PG Admin tool, as I mentioned. So it's part of the installation, but you need to select it as part of the setup process, PG Admin, and then you can have access to this tool where you can administrate the database, create databases, create new tables, store procedures, etc. You can run and execute SQL commands, etc. And in order to start using this PG Admin, typically you need to log in. So then you need to specify the server name, the host. If you have the database on your same computer, you typically just select localhost. Then this default port is 5432, and the default database which is created as part of the installation is this Postgres database. And the user is also part of the installation is this Postgres user, and the password that you entered during the installation. So this password that you enter during the installation is the password for this super user called Postgres, like this. So that's basically it. You need to remember your password, and then the default database and user is just Postgres. Then when you have logged in to the PG Admin, you can of course create other databases, etc. You can also create other users. You can change your password, etc. But that's the default setup that you need to use in order to be able to connect to the PG Admin module.